Now, in conclusion, here is where we end up. The ultimate goal in philosophy, the big questions, the questions about metaphysics, and about the way reality is, and about what we know, how we can know, lead us to action. What's the action? How we ought to behave, how we ought to govern our lives, and how we, society, government, should be regulated and should function. Remember, the republic that Plato is sketching out in that dialogue is a utopia. It's the ideal government. Remember, I mentioned it follows the teleological concept. That is, it's the goal of what society ought to become. The goal of the state is to achieve harmony among the people. The gold people, the philosophers, the guys with knowledge should rule because they know what the right things are. And how do you make sure that there are gold people, that they've been educated properly? Well, we have their education that I just mapped out a few minutes ago. Now, this may very well be Plato's utopia, Plato's ideal, but many of us are not as excited about this idea. This also becomes the idea of totalitarian regimes, including those that have tried to implement communism and have for periods of time implemented communism. I mean, we still have such a state in Cuba, to some very large extent in China, the People's Republic of China. Interesting name that we have, the People's Republic. Some communists call themselves the Democratic Republic of. Now, this is the kind of thing that makes many of us nervous. And in fact, a very great philosopher of the last century, of the 20th century, a man named Karl Popper, wrote a book, The Open Society and Its Enemies. It was a 2-volume book. The first one was dedicated to Plato's theory of government in the Republic. He is not very impressed. We seem to lose our freedom. Freedom is not something that concerns Plato, because the people, the philosophers, and remember, the philosophers are not, they aren't the evil people that have run the evil totalitarian regimes. These are the people that really know things, and these are the people that are going to be forced to rule society. I guess when Plato was a young man, it meant that Socrates should have been forced, rather than running around trying to find out who had knowledge and driving everybody or annoying everybody and embarrassing them and driving them crazy. According to Plato, he should have been ruling in Athens. Now, this is something many of us are not very impressed with. It certainly is not our ideal, and sometimes even our government lapses into putting people in charge. I mean, the issue that some people take is they say, Plato had the right idea. The guys who are in the know, the people who have real knowledge should rule society. The only problem that people who maintain that claim today is the people who are attracted to politics are not the right kinds of people, and not the kinds of people who have knowledge, who really know what the good is and will only act on the good, because that's another interesting feature of Plato's ethics. There's a concept called weakness of the will that really developed after Plato. Weakness of the will is the idea that you know what the right thing is. For instance, stealing isn't right, but the thief can't help himself for some reason. That is, he knows that what he's doing is wrong. Plato did not believe that that's possible. He believed that if you really know what's right, you have no choice but to do it. And in that way, the people who really know what's right, the philosophers, should be forced to govern society. And there are a whole bunch of paradoxes that you guys can think about it. But this is where we're going to end our discussion with Plato's political philosophy. Now, having gone the whole circle, we started out trying to figure out what the world was like, what the universe was like, and we delved into metaphysics. And we noticed that some of the metaphysical answers or answers in quote, that had come up with by the pre-Socratic philosophers left us in a situation where you couldn't have knowledge, which brought the sophists around, and the way they restored knowledge was by saying, well, everybody's opinion is where everybody's entitled to their opinion. Everybody's opinion is as good as anybody else's, and the only thing that we can do is try to persuade other people to our side. That is, my opinion is true, therefore I have knowledge. Socrates didn't think that's right. He rebelled against it, paid for it with his life. And other people throughout the ages have paid for their principles with their lives, usually not their philosophical principles. That is what constitutes knowledge and things like that. And finally, Plato comes to try to restore some rationality. Notice why I say rationality has many meanings here, because rationality has to do with the way we gain knowledge. Notice it's by thinking, it's not by observation. And people who follow Plato, including Aristotle, take issue with his putting reason above observation and data to bring knowledge.